The Phoenix metro area, known for extreme heat and clear desert skies, suddenly got hit with weather that felt completely out of place for Arizona. In just a few minutes, neighborhoods from Glendale to Ahwatukee were slammed with heavy hail, blinding sheets of rain, and wind gusts hitting around 50 miles per hour. Major highways turned into icy lanes, and entire streets were covered with nearly an inch of hail. What should have been a normal late autumn evening quickly erupted into thunder, lightning, power outages, and flash flooding that caught thousands of people off guard. For Americans who track severe weather, this wasn't just another passing storm. It was a rare, fast-moving system strong enough to collapse roofs, disrupt operations at Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, and knock out power for more than 6,000 customers in less than an hour. As radar lit up with small but powerful hail cores, the valley experienced something that looked more like a winter scene in Denver than anything you'd expect in the Arizona desert. When the atmosphere becomes this unstable, everything can shift in an instant. The first hints of trouble were subtle, some light rain across the Phoenix area and a faint rumble of thunder in the distance. But within moments, the sky darkened, temperatures fell sharply, and the entire valley was hit with one of the strongest hail-producing storms of the season. From the West Valley to the East Valley, neighborhoods went from dry roads to white-covered streets as hail nearly an inch wide battered cars, rooftops, and major freeways. One of the first major impact zones formed near Interstate 10 and 75th Avenue, where visibility dropped to nearly zero and drivers had to slam on the brakes as ice began coating the highway. Just minutes later, the storm spread into Glendale, Peoria, Avondale, Tempe, and Ahwatukee. Witnesses said the hail was falling so fast that roads looked like they were covered in snow, something almost unheard of in the middle of the Arizona desert. Emergency alerts started popping up one after another. A severe thunderstorm warning was issued across most of the valley, with wind gusts pushing close to 50 miles per hour and hail the size of quarters threatening to dent cars and crack windshields. Low-lying roads began filling with fast-moving water, triggering flash flood warnings in several cities. Inside shopping malls, water started dripping through ceilings as the storm intensified. At Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, officials ordered a ground stop as hail hammered the runways. At that point, the storm wasn't just bad weather. It had turned into a full-on atmospheric assault on one of America's biggest desert metros. When the heart of the storm rolled into Phoenix, the shift from calm skies to absolute chaos happened almost instantly. Streets that had been dry minutes earlier were suddenly being pounded by quarter-size hail hitting rooftops, vehicles, and storefronts with the force of a winter storm. Across neighborhoods from Avondale to Scottsdale, the non-stop clatter of hail slamming into metal carports and tile roofs sounded like rapid fire. Drivers hit their brakes as visibility dropped to almost nothing, and the roads turned into a slick layer of icy slush. Along Loop 202 and parts of Interstate 10, dozens of drivers pulled over after their tires began slipping on the hail-covered pavement. Traffic cameras showed headlights reflecting off sheets of ice, making Phoenix look more like Denver in January than a desert city in November. In Tempe, parking lots filled with icy piles, and residents filmed videos of their neighborhoods covered in a blanket of white. But the storm wasn't finished. Thunder cracked overhead. Lightning struck dangerously close to homes, and heavy rain created instant runoff on already soaked ground. In minutes, water rushed into low-lying roads, triggering flash flood warnings across Glendale, Peoria, Sun City, and much of North Phoenix. Emergency dispatchers were flooded with calls. Vehicles stuck, roofs leaking, power lines shaking under the force of the storm. And for thousands of families, that's when it hit them. This wasn't a normal Arizona storm. Across Phoenix and the nearby suburbs, the storm's impact showed up fast, not just in the numbers, but in the lives suddenly thrown off balance as hail, flash floods, and lightning ripped across the valley. Families coming home from work walked into neighborhoods that looked completely different, with streets coated in slick layers of ice. Kids pressed their faces against the windows, watching hailstones nearly an inch wide slam into rooftops, like winter had suddenly crashed into the desert. Over in West Phoenix, shoppers sprinted for safety when part of a mall roof collapsed under the weight of the hail and pooled water. Fire crews rushed inside as alarms echoed and debris hit the floor. And at Sky Harbor International Airport, travelers were stuck waiting after the FAA ordered a full ground stop. Dozens of flights frozen in place while lightning split the sky above the runways. For thousands of people, the scariest part wasn't the hail. It was the blackout. More than 6,000 customers lost power at the height of the storm, leaving entire neighborhoods lit only by sharp flashes of lightning. Parents checked on their kids, neighbors checked on each other, and emergency calls spiked as cars stalled in rising floodwater. Even for a state used to extreme heat and sudden weather swings, this storm felt different. Fast, icy, overwhelming. A reminder of how unprepared desert communities can be when the weather turns violent without warning. Across Phoenix, the storm showed just how quickly a normal weekday can flip into a citywide crisis. Families in Glendale and Peoria described the moment the sky went from bright to pitch black, followed by explosive thunder and waves of hail hitting roofs like someone dumping gravel from above. For people used to blazing sunshine and bone-dry air, seeing their streets buried under 1 to 2 inches of ice felt unreal, almost like a flash freeze right in the middle of the desert. Parents rushed to pick up their kids early from after-school programs as roads turned slippery and visibility dropped to almost nothing. In Tempe and Ahwatukee, drivers were forced to ditch their cars on Loop 202, choosing to walk to safety rather than risk sliding across lanes covered in hail and slick water. Within minutes, emergency dispatchers were overwhelmed. They fielded hundreds of calls, everything from stalled cars and fender-benders to people stuck in flooded underpasses with no way out. Over at a mall in West Phoenix, panic broke out when hail and rising rainwater weakened the roof. Part of it gave way, sending debris crashing into one of the hallways. Fire crews rushed in, cleared out the building, and helped dozens of shoppers get to safety as alarms echoed through the mall. For a lot of people, the shock of the moment hit harder than the storm itself. Residents said they felt unprepared, stressed, and stunned by how quickly the weather went from normal to dangerous. In a place known for blazing heat, this storm was a wake-up call. Extreme weather can strike anywhere, even right in the middle of the desert. Once the storm finally began to lose power, the city woke up to a Phoenix that didn't look like Phoenix at all. Entire neighborhoods were blanketed in thick piles of hail. Trees were bent and twisted from 50-mile-per-hour winds. Intersections across the valley sat underwater, blocked by muddy pools of floodwater. Cleanup crews worked straight through the night. Heavy machinery scraped hail, branches, and debris off major roads like I-10 and Loop 202. Firefighters checked damaged rooftops and inspected buildings hit hard by big chunks of hail. By morning, residents stepped outside to take in the damage: cars with smashed windshields, dented roofs, soaked interiors, and yards buried under several inches of freezing slush. Out in West Phoenix, the mall where part of the roof caved in was still blocked off while engineers checked how bad the damage really was. Power companies were still dealing with outages, sending crews to fix snapped lines and swap out blown transformers in neighborhoods from Tempe to Peoria. For a lot of families, the emotional impact hit just as hard as the storm itself. It came in fast and violently, leaving parents trying to calm kids who were scared by the boom hail and the sudden blackout. Local shelters stepped in to help people whose homes weren't safe to return to yet, and volunteer groups showed up with water, blankets, and basic necessities. The storm may have passed, but Phoenix was now facing the long, tough road of rebuilding and getting life back to normal in a place that rarely sees weather this extreme. The storms that rolled through Phoenix weren't just quick flashes of hail and lightning. They were a wake-up call, a cold, sudden reminder of how fast a normal day can flip into something completely unexpected. Even a desert city can look unrecognizable in minutes when nature decides to shake things up. Across the valley, people watched streets turn white with hail, saw water rushing through neighborhoods, and felt the impact of widespread power outages. And these memories won't fade anytime soon. Events like this aren't rare anymore. They're becoming part of a growing pattern of extreme weather hitting places that were once considered safe from this kind of force. From the Gulf Coast to the southwest, storms are developing faster, hitting harder, and disrupting everyday life in ways that feel more unpredictable every year. That's why staying informed matters. That's why being prepared matters. And that's why sharing these stories matters, because they help us understand what's changing, why it's happening, and what communities need to do to stay safe moving forward. If you want to keep up with these real-world events and support the work that brings you detailed, on-the-ground reporting, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these important stories reach more people who need to hear them.